I'd like to, if I could, I'm just going to paraphrase something else that you said during your presentation, and that is that basically DEKA and the organizations that you work with as well move at the pace of technology, not at the pace of public policy. And you mentioned, you gave us actually kind of a startling example of just how slow public policy can be. In this case, one of our favorite entities here at DDP, excuse me, the FDA. Basically, it was the story of the DARPA prosthetic arm that you're developing. Could you please relate that story for us briefly?
Well, as I said then, and again, as I'll repeat, I am genetically incapable of not being sarcastic, but we were visited by literally the people that run DARPA, the most senior people at the Department of Defense and at DARPA, said we have an urgent, and that was their word, an urgent need to give these kids that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan having lost entire limbs, and in a few cases bilateral, both upper arms, to IEDs and explosive devices of all manner. And they said it is wholly unacceptable to give them the current technology, a plastic tube with a hook on the end of it, to replace this. And they set a very, very audacious goal. We want these people to be able to pick up a grape without crushing it, so they want afferent haptic response. We want them to be able to pick up a raisin without dropping it, so they want fine motor control. In either case, we want them to be able to manipulate it into their mouth, so they need multiple degrees of freedom. And they went on, and I said, you know, that's pushing the technology for sensors, for controls, for servos, for power supplies and energy, but we'll do the best we can. And in a year, we had developed the physical hardware that we showed in that video, and in under 2 years, we had developed, along with it, the interface control strategies that allowed these people to make great use of it. And then we went to the Food and Drug Administration. And frankly, you know, we've done a lot of work on a lot of products that we do recognize need lots of clinical testing, and where lots of people are going to have the product, and you really have to worry about long-term unintended consequences.
Yes.
But frankly, we thought there's a very small population of people that need this thing, and they're not ingesting a new drug, and what about if a pregnant woman takes it, or what about if a child takes it, or what about the long-term effects of it that we don't understand. This isn't some not well understood phenomena or some ingestible device that's going to be given to millions and millions of people. It's an electromechanical gizmo that you attach to a residual limb, and either you can pick up the grape or you can't. And these are, in most cases, a small group of, in many cases, special forces guys, people that know how to assess risk, and people who have literally given up their arms and legs for the country, and we need to give them something now. And when the Food and Drug Administration came back basically saying, well, you can't get a 510K, which, you know, is predicated on, there's a predicate device, this is an extension. And it's almost flattering to have them say there's nothing like that out there. They didn't count these old devices as predicate devices, but then they said, therefore, you would have to go through the other process that typically takes a long time. We were just astounded, because nobody, I don't think, ever intended an agency, any government agency, to do anything bad. We all know why we need an FDA. Protect the public. Make sure that what people tell you is right. Make sure that they've done all the right. We all understand the spirit of the FDA, but over generation after generation of complex rules and rulings of all kinds, it now appears that, ironically, the agency that's there, I think, to promote better health care is a bottleneck. There's long delays because they're overworked. Frankly, that's good news. It means there's so much new innovation coming, but they can't respond quickly. They can't and sometimes it's because they are bound by various regulations, probably well-intentioned when they were created, but suddenly we find ourselves in the bizarre situation that if you asked any individual at the FDA, do you see any reason why we can't give this thing to that soldier who's missing an arm? They'd look at you and say, well, no, but I'm not allowed to make that decision. We have a process in place. But now that process is so cumbersome and so expensive, and in some cases is adding so little value and in fact depriving people of value, that I think it's time to be overhauled. And ironically, I think the American public is demanding more and more innovation, make things better, make things faster, make things cheaper. And that is in many ways inconsistent with what these agencies do. In fact, the more innovative it is, by definition, the less likely it is to fit the 510K, which is premised on similar to a predicate device. So the more innovative it is, the less likely it will be that it can be quickly approved. And again, I don't think anybody intended that. I don't think the agency has people that are intentionally being difficult. We just are now seeing, as is often the case, that the unintended consequences of well-intentioned rulemaking has, in effect, given people exactly the opposite of what they were hoping to get. And I just hope that people in the Senate and people in the Congress and people in the agencies themselves, as you heard Senator Daschle say, are able to use good judgment and properly weigh the risk versus the opportunity and reward. They've gotten better and better over time at weighing the risk and being risk averse. And they need to start weighing the opportunity, and they need to start recognizing that the goal of eliminating all conceivable risk carries with it an unintended consequence that is making innovation almost impossible to bring to the public. And we have to fix that.
In fact, the approval process, I think you estimated, will take quite a bit longer than the actual development process.
We are now at a point already where the amount of time that it took to create the particular device that you saw, even first generation, has been exceeded by the amount of time it's taking to get the ability to put them on people in a meaningful way. And sadly, we will not be able to induce the industry to go make these things when they have so much uncertainty about whether they're ever going to be allowed to sell them or whether they're ever going to see reimbursement for them. So on the one hand, we've got some government agencies like the Department of Defense and DARPA that are saying to us, get those things done fast and find us somebody to make them and put them out there on people. And at the same time, we have other government agencies that are making that an unlikely outcome, and there is a chilling effect of bureaucracy that's slowing the process down.
Yeah, it's outrageous. In fact, it really it was very upsetting because, just for our listeners who didn't see this, Dean showed a couple of the actual amputees who were using this extraordinary technology that allows you to take a spoonful of cereal and draw it to your mouth without dropping, a drop of milk, something that a fully functional human can't possibly accomplish, and to see that them deprived of the ability to do that and left with a Civil War era technology, the hook that you referenced, by one of our own agencies is it's staggering. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done.
Yeah. And again, it's not that there's any bad person in those agencies. If there was, we'd know what to do. Get rid of them.
Yeah.
The good news is there are no bad people there. The bad news is that means it's not going to be fixed easily. The bad news is this is a systemic problem. It's been created, frankly, because we have a culture that for now decades has been told that you can eliminate all risk, you can make things completely safe, And people want to hear that, and people buy into that.
Yeah.
And then they find out medical products cost way more than consumer products. Well, that's because somebody spent, in many cases, 5 or 10 years and hundreds of millions of dollars testing it.
Right.
Then they find out not only are medical products way more expensive than consumer products, but consumer products, you get new ones every year that get better and better than the old ones. Look at your cell phone today, look at your iPhone versus a cell phone of 10 or 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
And they wonder why in something that's even more important than a video game.
Yeah.
Why is it that medical products advance so slowly? Well, because the process of trying to prove with almost infinite amounts, in some cases, of data and experiments that there's no conceivable risk that hasn't been evaluated, the consequence becomes long delays and high cost, and then that drives innovators away from developing those products. We have way more software people working on video games today than we have working on improving medical products today. And so suddenly, again, the public is, I think, starting to recognize you can't naively say, I want it absolutely safe, and I want it low cost, and I want it now. You can probably get 1 out of 3, maybe 2 out of 3, but you can't get all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have not just citizens recognize that, but through those citizens, interactions with their elected officials and their control over these agencies, we need a more educated, more realistic society that starts to understand that risk is part of life. It should be well understood. It should be reasonably articulated, not just throughout the process of developing a product, but to the agencies and to the public.
Yes.
But in the end, the public has to accept reasonable risk and move forward. I mean, if we do that in other forms of interactions in life, I mean, I could say to you, I've got a great product that I'd like to have you try. It's a great product. It'll improve your life, create a lot of jobs. It's a fun product. It helps the economy grow. It's a great product. But one thing, it's going to kill 40,000 people this year, kill them. You'd say, well, the FDA would never approve that if they sold one person with a product. Well, my great product, it's not only going to kill 40,000 people, I think. It'll probably put 1 million in the hospital this year. In fact, it'll put 1 million in the hospital every year, as it has been. You'd never get that through the FDA, you tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my product that I was describing to you, it's called the car.
Mm-hmm.
We know that last year 40,000 people were killed by cars.
Yes.
We know that 1 million people were put in the hospital by cars. Many of them weren't even driving the cars or in the cars. And yet, as a society, we somehow accept the level of risk of things we already are aware of. We don't use that same standard when we're looking for new medical technology.
Uh-huh.
And until we, again, readdress the appropriateness of, quote, no risk, until we give these agencies the appropriate authority and the appropriate guidance that we understand that new medical products will carry risks. It's your job to make sure they're well understood.
Mm-hmm.
It's your job to minimize them as much as is reasonably possible.
Yeah.
It's your job to make sure that industry is honest and truthful and transparent in what it's delivering. But in the end, you've got to let these technologies move, and you've got to let people make choices about what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Just like people are allowed to make a choice of whether they want to ride a motorcycle. And they want to ride a motorcycle at night, in the rain, on a wet road. Well, you know what? There's very, very few things that are being held up right now at the FDA that are anywhere near as dangerous as a lot of the risks you and I are going to take this afternoon. But we've got to find a way to rebalance that system.
To find some sensible policy, absolutely. Speaking of sensible policy, many people in politics and the media, etc., have talked about the decline of America, of our ability to compete with the rest of the world, particularly lamenting